Let's pop that on. And we'll use this. There we go. And I'll put my name in for those who don't know me. So Ali, who's new on this call? We've got a tight group today. That's going to be great. Who's here? I can see Henry's here, Mohammed's here, Ken is here. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a few others coming over in just a few minutes. Are these all familiar faces from yesterday, or we got some new folk here with us?
No, I think they all seem familiar to me. Mohammed, right. I'm not sure Mohammed was here yesterday.
No, sorry, good morning, and I was not. It was like I'm in the Eastern Coast time, Canadian time, so it was 5 a.m. at my place, and I was not able to join. But I requested for a recording because I was eagerly waiting for this event, and so if there is any recording for yesterday, I would definitely appreciate.
Hey, look, it's great to see you, Mohammed. It's really always wonderful to see you. Did you record yesterday, Anna, or just you use the Fireflies?
Yeah, we did record it.
Nice.
And I think Paul mentioned that we will be sharing the recording with attendees along with the presentation as well.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
And I'll give a brief overview of what we discussed yesterday, Mohammed. So hopefully that will bring you up to speed.
Can I just get a turbo kind of who's on the call, just because it'd be great to know a bit more of the context. I mean, Ali, you're probably going to say this, but keep your microphones on, put your cameras on if you want. We don't care what you look like. We're just hanging out together, learning, growing together. So you don't need to have any makeup on or anything just to hang out with us. I think I kind of know a few of you on the call anyway, but Andrew, I was going to ask you anyway to kick off as you're A, aren't you, in the alphabet at the top here? Just a kind of 30 seconds on a little intro from you, if that's okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know why my camera wasn't working yesterday, but it seems to be today. My name's Andrew Fraser. I'm here from Computer Center today and talking, or we're currently thinking about how we can use AI in our organization, setting up a small working party to look at that, and really interested in this group and their views in terms of how we can get ready as a business for that. Some really good introductory groundwork covered yesterday, and really looking forward to today's session.
You're very welcome. Great to see you. Yeah, and I know you have an exciting project in the offing as well. So that's good timing and very exciting for you as well. For some reason, alphabetically, Tim is next on my list, and I'll have to find out from Zoom how they've managed to put T next to A before H. But anyway, Tim, if you could say hello.
Sorry, just jumped onto the call. I assume we just did an introduction. So
just 30 seconds on your professional background.
My professional background, degree in AI, been doing solution and system architecture for longer than I'd like to remember. Recently, last 5 years, got into data architecture. So actually working with organizations, transforming them from sort of traditional solutions-based system design areas into more data-driven organizations. So managed to sort of take a couple through that process. So really interested in what's going to go on today.
Me too. Yeah, looking forward to this very much. Alejandro, can you put your microphone on for a few seconds? If you wish. Oh, yes, there you are. How are you?
Richard. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Fine. I decided to join today to the meeting, but I tried to listen the conversation and know about the topic, about the ethics, about the AI, etc.
You're very welcome. And just a few seconds on your professional background.
Yes. I'm sorry, but because my English is so-so, but I do my best. Okay, I start in Colombia, how compliance officer in a bank, in many banks, maybe 4 banks. And before that, I work with BBA Foundation Microfinance in Spain for maybe 10 years. And my first responsibility was the anti-money laundering risk. Then I lived in Dominican Republic for 3 years, and my responsibility was how compliance officer in Banco Adopem. It's a bank that is specifically with the target of microfinance. And now I have a company with specifically topics about compliance, governance, and risks, financial risks and non-financial risks. More or less, this is my
Wow.
yes.
Terrific
Yes.
resume.
Terrific resume.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
sharing.
so much for sharing.
Ali's going to give me the old evil eyes a minute for using up all of his time just getting to know you. Also, I'm trying to annoy him too much. It's going to pop it on mute, for background echo there. So we're going to have to go a little bit faster now just to keep Ali happy. Otherwise, he'll say I've left in no time. So Federico, are you there? Let's just have 20 seconds, a little bit of professional background on you. We'll come back to Federico. Henry, 20 seconds, professional background on, oh no, you're on the phone. Hessam, 20 seconds, professional background. Here we go.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm developing Python programs about 4 years, I guess, and creating software, working on machine learning, data science, all of the stuff, big data. And I'm from Iran.
Cool. You're very, very welcome. Great to see you. We're going to have some fun today.
Thank you.
Karen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen from MKAI. I'm really enjoying being here with those really great people from these awesome backgrounds. I don't have a technical background, but I am an AI enthusiast. So that's why I'm here. Want to learn with you, Ali, and with Richard always.
You're in good company and you're very, very welcome. Leslie, how are you?
Hello, Richard. Hello, everyone. I'm fine, and you? How are you?
Very well, Leslie. We're hanging out 2 days in a trot. We've got to find a reason to hang out tomorrow now. Make it big 3.
All right.
20 seconds, professional background for you, Leslie.
All right now, currently?
Yeah, just a couple of things, couple little highlights, something so we can get to know you.
Okay, I'm Leslie Wardupelville. I'm located in Haiti, Caribbean. I'm currently a IT manager, and I really like cloud. I'm working for a nonprofit organization, which name is Focal. We are involving with a lot of grantees. We are doing a lot of we are managing a lot of grants. We are also within the art and culture field. So my job is really like to manage all the IT service and IT application, IT device, everything related to IT. I'm really deep within the cloud computing domain right now, and I've put several workloads within the cloud. Currently, I have a focus on AI, machine learning, IoT, all of those stuff, and I would like to go further with that. But I would like to thank you for this opportunity to be part of this group where we can mitigate risk, we can mitigate a lot of biases within that field, and we can work together to have something very interesting.
You're very, very welcome, Leslie, and we're equally grateful to have you here with us today. You're so very welcome. Okay, we've got to get down to 15 seconds now, or Ali's going to be private messaging me in a second if I don't speed this up for him. So David, just 1 or 2 sentences, your professional background, if you don't mind.
Yes, certainly. I'm glad to be here. I've had a, shall I say, long-standing involvement with data analysis and more recently business intelligence. I've always had an interest in AI, data science. I've productionized, I would say, entry-level AI models in the form of classification and regression. But my more recent work is around BI, but of course with the Microsoft stack. But of course, as we know, it's more and more being incorporated into Power BI. So I have an ongoing interest in data science and AI models, even in relation with BI.
Excellent. You're in the right place, and we're very, very glad to have you here. Right, 15 seconds. Jaisal.
Yeah, speaker relationship manager and moderator for MKAI, and also the XR safety lead, data architect for Times Higher Education. Thank you.
Boom. That's how you do it. Kenneth hasn't got his video loaded, so I might be asking too much there, but interrupt me, Kenneth, if you're there. Put your mic on. Hessam, we haven't heard from you yet, have we? I'm starting to do, everyone's names moves around. Robert, we haven't heard from Robert yet, have we?
I know, I think Robert was here yesterday as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ali, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll jump in, right?
Sure. Firstly, thank you very much, everyone, for coming in. Like, all of you have very interesting and awesome backgrounds. And I think thank you, MKAI and Richard, for providing us this platform to come together and share our skills, share our knowledge with each other, and learn from each other. I myself am a doctoral researcher at UCL, University College London. My research focuses on transparency of AI development pipelines. So, right from the beginning, when you are brainstorming on what kind of AI product you need, till the very end, when you have built, you have kind of, processed the data, cleaned the data, put it in a machine learning model, you've got the results, and now you want to kind of apply it in real world. And you then deploy that model or that AI tool in real world through a particular platform. This entire, pipeline, how do we make it transparent for end users, for different tiers of stakeholders? That is what my research kind of focuses on. And I've also worked as an AI consultant with a few companies in financial services and educational technology. So good to have you, Paul. So diving right into it. So firstly, I'll give a brief overview of what we actually discussed yesterday. So firstly, we had a discussion on what artificial intelligence is, how its definition, how its meaning can change. There is no fixed definition. Then we had a discussion around what are the different applications, and we discussed some very interesting applications in financial services, in recruitment, in supply chain, and also in different types and different other sectors like agricultural as well as education. Then we kind of dived a bit deeper into the different components that are required to build an AI system. And today we are going to focus on applying those components on a real world case study, where we will try to kind of brainstorm and think of how these components apply on building AI powered recruitment tool for example, a financial services company. So let me just share my screen. Yes. So can you all see my screen?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Okay, perfect. So we discussed these different components yesterday. Today, so all those components, I've put them together on what we call an AI readiness canvas. It is basically a one-pager where we kind of fill in how these different components would come together to build a particular AI product. Now, some of the components that we discussed yesterday were like business problem. What is the use case for which you want to kind of build an AI product? What kind of data you have to build that AI tool? You need like human resources in the form of data scientists or machine learning engineers, or some people call it like AI practitioners. You need machine learning models, any kind of like machine learning models. We discussed some of them yesterday briefly as well. Then you have like different stakeholders who would be involved in building the tool, who would be impacted by the tool, who would be using the tool. And there is a chance that the users of the tool might be very different from the people who might be, eventually impacted by a particular AI product. And last but not the least, then we had a very interesting discussion on the risks involved, like ethical aspects of AI. And we also discussed a couple of examples where AI unfortunately did not work in real world. And some pretty big companies ended up losing like a pretty significant amount of their workforce. Like, does anyone have like any comments, anything, or like any questions or anything like that about what we discussed yesterday? Okay.
You said a couple of people were here yesterday, I think. Who was here? And sorry, I wasn't able to make it myself. I was double booked. Lavina's here. Wonderful. Who was here yesterday that could comment on that, Ali?
I think I know Robert was here. We also had, I think Andrew was here as well.
Okay. Robert, how was the session for you yesterday? What did you take from it?
Yeah, it was a really good session. Really enjoyed it. We're talking about lots of, well, I mean, he took it through the different definitions and how difficult it is to agree on that definition. But then just went through all the different components of AI with the business problem, the data. Yeah, and so just looking forward to this, the AI Readiness Canvas.
Nice. That's great to hear. Henry, anything that you wanted to add from yesterday?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had a call.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, the different experiences, perceptions of what AI is and what's needed for AI. Obviously, there's so many different use cases and so many different levels of people's knowledge and experience. So that's something that needs to be obviously considered when you're starting a project. Is what the appetite in the business is, what the experience in the business is, and also amongst all the people involved in the technical side as well.
Yes, it's good reflection, good feedback.
Richard, Paul here. Can I just share something too? Ali, I think there was part of the conversation towards the end of yesterday that left something a bit open-ended, perhaps in a good way, but people asking still maybe for more about what is the difference between machine learning and AI, or when does machine learning become AI? Does it matter? Was another one. And and is the question, are you ready for AI the same as are you ready to use machine learning?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think there were a few like messages on the chat as well, like if AI is a subset of machine learning or if machine learning is a subset of AI. So in literature and in the research literature, these terms have quite widely been used like interchangeably. Like AI replaces machine learning and machine learning replaces AI. In my opinion, I believe like machine learning is kind of a part of like AI. For example, one of the things that we discussed was machine learning models. So, as the name implies, machine learning is a part of the entire AI development process where we have a particular aspect in that AI development pipeline, which we call machine learning. And that can be a particular algorithm. It can be, that some of the algorithms that we discussed yesterday were like neural networks, or like reinforcement learning or support vector machines. Like these are called machine learning models or like algorithms, or like that black box where data goes in and it produces something. AI, in my opinion, can be considered something like as a more like high-level view where machine learning kind of becomes a part of it. But as I said, like there is no definite right or wrong or yes or no answer to that. These terms have quite frequently been used interchangeably. So it is difficult, like even if you say like machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, like you can actually kind of claim that, and you can also prove that because machine learning is a part of the AI development pipeline. But AI development pipeline, some people call it machine learning development pipeline. So, you know, like these terms kind of interchange quite a lot in the literature. But I would say like we cannot have artificial intelligence without machine learning. There has to be some component of machine learning involved for us to build an AI system. And as like, and then, you know, like there are different types of machine learning algorithms, as like Muhammad has said, commented on in the chat, like it can be supervised, it can be unsupervised, there can be reinforcement learning. And then within each category, there are different algorithms that we have. But once we have, you know, a working product which is producing certain predictions that how, for example, a self-driving, like for example, it is applied in a self-driving car, or you know how a particular trader would perform, or how a particular employee would perform in a certain context. That entire, you know, tool can be considered as an AI tool, or as an like an AI-powered product. I hope like it clarifies the confusion a bit, but there is no, you know, like clear distinction between these two terms. There is like a lot of overlap. So thank you, Paul, for bringing that up. I think that was an important point. And there was some like brief like discussion on this yesterday as well.
Nice, thanks for the explanation, Ali, that's very useful. So are we jumping into this agenda now for day 2? Is that what I see on my screen?
Yep.
Exciting.
So,
okay.
So over here, what you see is this AI Readiness Canvas. Firstly, like the way I've planned this workshop is that firstly, we will go through this like AI Readiness Canvas. We'll go through the different components. We discussed most of these components yesterday. We will go through these, and then we will, as a group together, like we will, I'll start filling it in for a particular AI product. For example, we say like for the recruitment, if you want to build a recruitment tool, we'll have a discussion on how do we fill in this canvas for the recruitment sector. Then after that, once we have done that, we will go into like, you know, breakout rooms, and over there, we'll share the links with you. And within each breakout room of like 4 to 5 people, you will have an opportunity to kind of fill in this AI, like readiness canvas for your own particular AI product. So you can have a discussion, and one of you can present your idea, and then you as in that smaller group can kind of fill this canvas in. And I'll pop in like in different breakout rooms, and we'll have a discussion on that as well. So in a way, like after this session, hopefully you will have like a filled in AI readiness canvas for any AI idea that you have, or for any like AI product that you're thinking of developing. So, and again, like I want to kind of iterate that this is a very interactive session. So please feel free to kind of chip in. Like if you don't understand anything that I'm saying, please feel free to interrupt, ask questions if anything is unclear, and if you have any ideas, if you think there is something missing in it, please like feel free to jump in. So firstly, like as we discussed yesterday, if you want to build an AI tool, the first thing that you kind of look into is the use case. Like what is the business problem? Like what is this business problem that you're trying to solve? You know, and why do you think that AI, you know, is going to work in this particular context? Now, this is like very important, like for you to kind of, you know, like brainstorm this and kind of look into details. Why, like look into the details as to like why do you think like AI is the perfect solution for this? Because many times it has happened in the real world that AI does not work, and there can be many reasons for that. But at times it might be that AI might not be the perfect solution. Like, you know, you can just use a basic rule-based system, and you can get like very good results. So you don't have to allocate resources for, you know, for developing complex AI products. Then another thing that you focus on when you want to kind of when you're planning on building an AI product is like the challenges. Like what do you think are the challenges that you would face in building this AI product? For example, like do you think there is enough data you have? Do you think you have enough expertise, or you want to recruit relevant people? You want to build a separate team for that, or do you think like are you kind of clear in your vision, like what you want AI to produce? like as we discussed yesterday, like one of the things that you want to kind of make sure you get right when you're planning an AI product is that you have to be as specific as possible for your business problem, because AI cannot be generalized. So, you need kind of definite answers. Like, I want AI to, for example, provide me a recommendation for this particular thing, or I want AI to kind of, provide me a prediction on how a stock would be like this much months down the line. So like it is very important to be very specific in that. And then, you should also always explore like, is there any precedent? Like, has anyone applied AI in this kind of context before? So for example, if you want to kind of apply like AI for an educational technology product, and if you want to kind of, build a tutor that would help primary level students with mathematics, for example, do you think, has anyone done this before? It is always useful to kind of, study how they have gone about building their AI products. And you will find a lot of literature on different contexts where AI has been applied, where the companies, where teams have kind of shared their experience of building AI products in different sectors. Does anyone have like any insights? Like, do you think like there is any particular challenge that you think you would face for your own particular product?
Andrew, do you want to volunteer to go first on this? Well, I'm not asking you to share any IP or specifics here, but
yeah, sure.
What's on your mind?
I have a slightly unique challenge here in that we've been given a mission to do more with data, but not a specific business problem to solve. So I need to come with the business problems. We've got plenty of data. I think we're going to have some challenges around the stakeholders and how we get people motivated. But at this point in time, it's very much a little bit of an exploration discovery phase from our side in terms of how AI might be able to help. We've got lots of problems, but none specific. We have, I guess, an advantage that we can look at several and see what might lend itself to some quick wins. Yeah.
There's often talk about AI being the solution. Now you just have to find the problem. That's something we've heard commonly in our industry.
Absolutely.
So does that background and history of AI just being used as this blunt stick? We'll use some AI on this. Let's just get some ML on this. Then we can tell that story. What have you learned from those other people's experiences, do you think, to make sure you don't go sort of applying this to areas where it isn't necessarily needed?
Well, I think I'm not sure I have learned anything from other people's experiences. So that's part of the reason I'm here today. But we discussed yesterday, and for me, AI, machine learning, depending on your definition, I see very much as something that augments what we're doing already as people, not replacing people, but allowing us to scale and grow, potentially finding some new things that humans wouldn't have picked up on in the data. But yeah, so I think as long as we're realistic about that kind of outcome within our business, I think it will be easier to get people on board. So not selling it as the panacea that it will solve everything and it'll make turn data into gold and suddenly get double our revenue overnight and things like that. But really just as an incremental thing. We can obviously build on that in the future, but that would be my expectation, is that we don't set those expectations too high from the outset.
And what do you think would be more useful from this work, or perhaps a combination of both these ideas? But there must be lots of well-articulated problems in your organization that you could certainly prototype or do some brainstorming about how the use of big data processing, pattern recognition, ML and so on could help. Or do you actually see this as an opportunity to maybe uncover some things or shine a light on some parts of the business or some data in the business that maybe offers opportunities? What would give you more kudos, do you think, internally?
I think we have to take something that's already working well, as opposed to shining a light. Would be the approach that I think that we would take. I think that would give us the better win. Longer term, once it's proven that it can work, that the technology can work, then yeah, start shining a light on those areas that perhaps not performing at the moment. But again, we're a large organization. We've got large data sources and diverse. We've got our own data sources. We've got customer data as well, where we can potentially partner with customers. So we've got lots of opportunity, lots of potential business problems, but not one specific thing in mind at this stage.
Very good. Thank you. Is there somebody else who'd like to put their microphone on? Maybe just go through.
Hi, Ali.
Yeah, hi.
Recently, me also got some project to work on, and as Andrew told, we have a lot of data. We don't have any business scenario. So right now, I'm looking for a business scenario, but the requirement from client side is to use some graph database. So our question, if something can be done in very easy way, normal machine learning, why to go for graph and why to go for deep learning? So there is challenges also. We have a lot of things available with AI, machine learning, deep learning, graph, many more. But which tool is very correct, which help us to utilize minimum resources and give maximum output? So that is that's a challenge. I think it's ongoing. People are just rushing to use in NLP. They can use normal libraries. They are going for GPT-3, GPT-2, so like that. So this needs to be understand how wisely we should use any technique to solve AI problem. So that is one challenge.
Okay, I think so. I think that's a very interesting problem. Like I know for graphical databases, like I know like Neo4j is quite popular. It is also quite effective. And I know some machine learning use cases for like Neo4j's applications for fraud detection and identifying correlations and trying to kind of derive some form of causality within the databases. I think that is something quite interesting. But if like I would like normally recommend, and also something which like Edwin was mentioning earlier, usually when you kind of begin to solve a particular problem, you begin by just doing a very basic exploratory analysis of the data that you have, like all the data. You have the data set, but you don't know what problem can you solve. Exploratory analysis would give you some analytics on what kind of data you have, what are its strengths, what are its weaknesses, and like what the data lacks, what kind of applications can it have. Now, once you have done that, then it might be worth it to kind of get into some statistical analysis. That is, finding correlations between how rich your data is, finding some form of correlations, seeing if there is some form of causality, and then like do some literature review on relevant data. Like by literature review, I mean like where has this data been used in the past? How have people kind of benefited from it? I always like coming from a research background. I always recommend, like even AI practitioners, that it is always useful to kind of read some literature on how other people are kind of solving the kind of problem that you are solving. So in your case, if you have a data set, also see like which other companies do you think have this kind of data set and how have they leveraged that data set? I think that might be like quite useful.
Sure.
Yeah, I think someone has their hand up. Sorry, I can't see your name.
Renato, I think.
Yes, Richard. I was writing here in the chat. Sorry to interrupt the meeting. I did many articles related with this subject about AI, but I didn't call it readiness. I call it AI-enabled organizations. I think that the maturity identification in the AI journey is also a very important thing. The article I did with MKAI in authorship identified the problem of the data, how I can say, the control of the consumer rights by their data. So we have to identify in the strategy of AI about the consentment of the data by the consumer. So you have to make the case in the strategy, in the canvas. I would add also the consentment of the data. You have to have a strategy to able the consumer to have a voice on their ownership of their data, and also to the data governance committees. You can make all the stakeholders to be represented and have a voice.
Yeah, thank you, Renato. I think that's a very interesting and a very useful point. So in Europe, I know like under GDPR, like consent form is kind of necessary. Like you can't use the data of the people without their consent. And this is something which kind of comes under the umbrella of the risks. What are the steps that you're taking to kind of mitigate risks? How are you kind of making sure that the tools that you are building, the AI-powered product that you are building, the data that you are collecting, it is in compliance with the rules and regulations of the geographic location where you're based. And not just that, but also, you have to kind of, as we kind of discussed yesterday, like you have to kind of invest a good amount of resources and time to kind of, understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of the AI tool that you have developed. Firstly, of the data that you have, through exploratory analysis, through statistical analysis, you will get an understanding of what are the strengths and weaknesses of the data. But then once you have developed the AI tool, it is always useful to kind of, conduct some usability tests with users and see how they are using the product, how the tool is performing. It is very much likely that the tool will perform unexpectedly in certain contexts, as we discussed yesterday. And it is very important to kind of highlight those contexts and share those with the users as well to avoid any kind of mishaps. Thank you. I think that was a very interesting point. Just kind of moving on in the interest of time. Sorry. So once you have you've addressed these challenges, you've done some analysis. Like now, what do you want your AI product to do? What do you want your AI tools and product to be? Do you want it to kind of make a prediction that a particular stock will perform in a particular way, or a particular employee would be a very high performing employee? And there are a lot of startups who have raised millions of dollars in funding based on just like building these recruitment tools which make predictions about candidates. Or would it be just it would provide insights? So you can do like some form of unsupervised learning if you have a lot of data, and you can try to structure that data, try to get a better understanding of it by just applying some unsupervised techniques, by applying some clustering techniques to kind of see like what are the different groups of what are the different metrics that you have in the data and how do they relate to each other. So
that's the open banking ecosystem also in UK. The open data, this concept, I'm implementing the open banking in Brazil with the company I work with, and we have a partnership with a company from UK. I wrote all the main articles in Brazil about open data and the Brazilian GDPR version. I was the author. So I consider in my writing about the consent meant also, and the problem you are solving, you put in the box of ML models. I would say that the identification of the problem you are solving is not the same as the AI use case. Because for one problem, you can have more than one AI case possibilities. What do you think about it?
Yep, exactly. So any particular problem that you have that you want to address, there are many different ways of going about it. Even for an AI system, there are many different ways in which you can solve. And once we discuss the case study of the recruitment sector, like how you build an AI-powered recruitment tool, you will see there are many different ways in which that same problem can be addressed. There are many different strategies that you can adopt. There are many different types of data that you can collect. And each of those, might have different results. That is why one of the things that we discussed yesterday, focus on experimentation. It is always interesting to kind of, allocate some resources, some time for experimentation to see what kind of results you get from different, for example, machine learning models, or from different types of data. Or from, for example, if you have synthetic data, what kind of results would that produce? So then this data aspect, So in this canvas, you will see like the leftmost column and the rightmost column. These are basically the questions that can be addressed by business leaders, like who are strategizing, like, okay, we want to build an AI tool. What would it do? What are its benefits? Who are its stakeholders? What are the risks involved? But this middle column on data and machine learning models over here, you need some expert advice, like either from people who have like a data science background or some form of machine learning background to kind of, tell you like about what kind of data would you need if you want to solve this particular problem. And also like domain expertise, especially for the data set, you need domain experts to be a part of, to work very closely with the technical team, because they would kind of help you identify whether this data set like actually represents the correct metrics for the problem that you are trying to solve. And many times this like domain expertise is something which is ignored in the AI development processes, because people think like if we have the best data scientists on board, they can build the best product. But if these data scientists are not collaborating with the domain experts, not getting their feedback on what kind of data needs to be collected, on what are the results of the exploratory analysis and the statistical analysis of the data, if they're not getting the domain experts input in this, there are chances that they might be like working in a they might build the best possible product, but that might just work in a particular bubble in a certain context. When it goes out and is deployed in real world, it might produce very unexpected results. And we have seen that happening in the past. That is why like domain experts are like very important when you're kind of deciding on when you're analyzing your data, when you're deciding on what kind of data to collect, and you are kind of trying to evaluate what are the limitations and what are the strengths of the data set that you have. And many times these domain experts would kind of give you a brief overview that might take you like technically a good amount of time or resources to kind of identify. For example, they can tell you like, okay, if you are applying AI in this domain, so I'm working in this company, I'm a domain expert in this. I can tell you like, for example, this particular gender or females are very much less represented in this particular data set, because we don't get a lot of female applications, or we don't have a lot of female employees. These kind of insights can be very useful, and it can save time for the technical team. Then like once you have kind of a good overview of the data set that you have built, the next step is like the machine learning models. Over here, like again, the expertise of the data scientists in machine learning engineers or like AI practitioners would kind of come into play. And some of the factors that we kind of discussed yesterday that they need to take into account when they're choosing a particular machine learning model. And these factors, in these factors, like you can have your inputs, like business leaders can have their inputs. For example, they can say, they can put forward this requirement that we want our AI product to be explainable, or we want it to be as transparent as possible. We want our end users to kind of see how the tool is making decisions. Now, these kind of considerations or these kind of requirements that have been put forward by the business, by the executive team would kind of, have a very big impact on the choice of the machine learning model that the technical team decides to use, or data scientists kind of decide to use, because some machine learning algorithms are considered more explainable or more transparent than others. Some are considered complete black boxes, and this also means that they would have to allocate some separate, like some time or some energy, some resources to kind of just focus on this aspect of the development. And many times there is no like the reason why experimentation is very important in developing AI development products is firstly, like they are very complex, and there is no definite right or wrong answer. That is why I said like it is very important for you to kind of see like similar use cases. If you are building a tool for an educational industry, it would be very useful to study some other AI powered products that have been built in the tech space. Because that would kind of give you a very good overview of what kind of machine learning models do you want to use. Otherwise, you should always experiment. There is a particular data set. One machine learning algorithm like neural nets might work very well with that data set, but another machine learning algorithm like random forest or support vector machines might not perform like good at all. Then you have another data set. On that data set, random forests might work really well, and neural networks might not perform good at all. So it can really vary. There is no like right or wrong answer. Like no one can claim that this is the best machine learning algorithm. There can be a best machine learning algorithm, but it would only work with a certain kind of data set in a certain context. And this is where like you would need the advice, the assistance of experts in this domain, like of AI consultants or of data scientists. Does anyone have like any comments on this?
I saw a comment from Alejandro maybe 5-10 minutes ago, and I wondered if we just wanted to loop back to that, because we didn't really pick up more about what you were speaking about. The in compliance, the reg tech and the sub tech need the AI to develop solutions according to their objectives. I don't know if we just wanted to talk a little bit more about that, Alejandro, before we move on, or if just a kind of comments you wanted to say. So just checking.
Richard, if I agree, I prefer listen and write, and let me take practice my English. In 2 weeks. I promise that I can speak fluently more. Okay.
Very welcome. Do it your way. I speak one language, and I'm humbly, superbly impressed by anybody who can navigate more than one language.
Okay. Yes. But I promise it's a commitment. Oh my goodness.
We need to. Cool.
Yes. To get exchange, give more information and give my experience in other companies is I need feel secure with the language. I know English and listen perfectly that Ali give us, but I need practice. Give me 2 weeks and I promise that I can do my best. Okay, Richard?
Let's have a call, me and you, in 2 weeks as well.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
I want to talk more with you.
I use the chat a lot, okay?
Perfect. And my apologies for putting you on the spot there. I obviously didn't intend to cause you any embarrassment.
Richard, I told you about AI drift problem also. Right? It would be important to be considered in the canvas.
Yes.
Yep. Like AI drift is a very important aspect of it, and I think this is something which would come under the risks as well. Where like once you have deployed an AI system in real world, the kind of data it sees might be very different or might kind of change over a period of time. And if the data that the AI tool is seeing in real world might be very different from the data that it is trained on. And this can, like have a huge impact on the kind of results that we get out of it. And that is why, even after the AI tools are deployed in real world, the work does not end over there. Over a period of time, experts still have to continue to kind of, work on improving the tools, to keep checks and balances, to kind of make sure the models are performing as expectedly. Like I know the cloud providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud, like they have kind of introduced recently some checks and balances which you can introduce on your, you can implement on your AI tools in real world, which would kind of give you warnings when the performance of the tool or the accuracy of the tool goes down a certain metrics, stuff like that. Sorry, Henry, you had your hand up. Sorry, I think you're unmute.
Sorry, I was just going to comment that I'm working with some data with machine learning, and the challenge we've got, it's basically, it's the simplest thing to say is it's physical testing data from a lab machine. And the challenge we've got is you can look at it with a particular set of data, even if you just graphing the results without even doing anything with machine learning. It looks great. And then you take a different set of data and it's got different characteristics or different noise on it. And it looks very different and doesn't behave the same way. And then similarly, when you put it into machine learning, that can be working fine with one set of data, and a slightly different set of data gives you different results that aren't what you expect. That's definitely one of the challenges. And the other thing is we get very promising results from doing this. Trying to turn it into a product we can then sell to a customer is a whole different issue, which is where I think your Readiness Canvas could assist us somewhat.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very common problem. and like it's a very common problem, which like most of the AI implementations in the real world kind of tend to waste. Like, once you have the test data and you kind of train your algorithm on that, and you kind of then experiment with it, and you see like how the model is performing. It performs really well. But when you give it like a new data set, or kind of you give it like real world data which is a bit different from the test data, the performance kind of tends to go down dramatically. One of the ways, like there are many ways this can be addressed. Like one of the ways is to kind of take account of as many different scenarios as possible, like gather as much data as possible, see if there are any metrics in the data set, like in terms of the richness of the data, if there are any metrics in the data set that you kind of might not be taking into account, any features that you might not be taking into account for the predictions that you think might be impacting the end results. So probably like in terms of the quantity of data, it is worth looking into, like try experimenting with like some more data and see if the results get a bit better. And in terms of the quality of data, it might be worth looking into it, like what are the features that you are using, and see if there is, and also kind of see, do some analysis of those on those features, if these features are highly correlated, and are there any particular metrics or features that you might be ignoring? Even if these features are highly correlated, it would kind of bias the results of your system, and because this means like a particular feature, a particular metric is being reinforced by different metrics. So like in terms of quality and as well as in terms of quantity, it might be kind of worth looking into it from like both angles. Okay, so moving on, then one of the things that we
Ali, let me just jump in one quick second, and apologies for this. I think there's actually some great expertise on this call as well, which is really quite great to see. But I'm curious of the 19 or so of us that are on this call. I wonder if anybody hasn't really spoken up yet, or that we can encourage to, that maybe is thinking about a project, or maybe is trying to kind of see the wood for the trees a little bit on what to do next. And maybe we could spend a couple of minutes on, what are their particular problems, or, what's the next steps for them. I know this is a little bit on the spot, but I promise you, we're here to learn together, and it's definitely a safe space. Obviously not going to ask you to share any confidential information or IP or anything like that. We're just talking in general terms here. I'm just looking across a list here. I mean, I know that Shailesh is here, David's here, Federico's here, Lavina's here, Kenneth's here, Mohammed we spoke with earlier, Robert we chatted with earlier, Shivakang obviously spoke a little while ago. Shailesh, your camera's on. Have you got something you can talk about with us?
Yeah, since you wanted people to talk about what we are doing, I thought I'd jump in.
Is that okay, Ali?
Yeah, please, definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I attended yesterday's session, which was very informative, and today, I mean, basically I do work with many projects where there is a lot of hype about AI. The customers I work with, they want to do something, and I'm more interested in basically identifying how to identify the data to use to train these models. And that's the question I had yesterday as well, primarily about, so if you give the model some data which is going to introduce bias, how can we create a framework to identify that upfront so that we don't give data which is going to result in the model learning something which we don't want it to learn, for example. So that's the aspect I was more interested to see if there is any work happening from a research angle. And especially on the projects that I'm working on, many of them are around image recognition. So we do work with images, document images, scanned images, and so on, trying to find unstructured content and then identifying structured text out of it. So we have developed that already. There's a lot of interest in the market for that, obviously, because even though many things are digital, there are still many more things which are still paper. Especially in financial industry, we think that everything is on an app, but many of the insurance companies still have a lot of forms and papers, and we have, say, driving license photographs, we have to submit something. And so it's a lot of manual work which happens, and many people say, oh, AI can do that. And it's not a trivial problem to solve.
Wave the magic AI wand, right?
So I'm trying to figure out from the data angle. I mean, this session that we are having is very useful, because if we train an algorithm to look for patterns on an image, that this could be possibly a name of a person, this could be an address, it should not misunderstand. I mean, how does it learned correctly? How does it not learn to identify things which are not actually intended, etc.? That is what I'm trying to gather from all these discussions. Sorry if that was a long answer to the question.
No, not at all. That was really interesting to hear. Ali, is that something you want to respond to, or can I ask Shailesh a couple more things? You go ahead though.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of, I think Shailesh, you raised a very interesting point, and it is like it's really good that you're already thinking about bias, like in your data sets. Now, there are many different ways in which the bias can be addressed, and that depends on the kind of bias that your system has. Many times, for example, there is one bias which we call like historic bias. It is in the data that we will collect from the real world, this bias will be ingrained in the data. One of the ways that can be addressed is by producing synthetic data of a similar distribution, but kind of counteracting that or mitigating that one lacking factor from the real world data set. So there's one way to kind of address that one. But then another bias, for example, is the representation bias, where a certain kind of group, which we see very commonly, like a certain group is not represented in the data set, and we kind of tend to take that into account by kind of feeding in some more examples, again creating some more synthetic data to kind of represent that group more often. This is something which we see very kind of often in real world, in financial services, in recruitment. In terms of like images, like I think so when you say like you don't want the tool to kind of, there are certain aspects of the images that you don't want the tool to learn, which is not a requirement by you. Like it is, I've seen like in the literature, like for image recognition, it might be kind of seeing if you can try tweaking those aspects of the images which it is identifying. So for example, if in the image there are two blocks of text, and one is the address and another is the name, and you don't want, for example, the address, and you just want the model to kind of learn the name. Firstly, it would be good to kind of see if you can try hard coding. Like if now this is again a very simplified example. Like if it is address, if you kind of identify ADDRE, like just ignore that aspect of the image. That this is like a hard encoding. But on the other hand, I've also seen like people mitigating biases by changing the the pixels of the writing a script and changing the pixels of the images. So if the algorithm kind of identifies a certain aspect of the image, like seeing if you can kind of overwrite that pixel and kind of those group of pixels, and kind of see if kind of that affects the results. I think it would be a trial and error method, like of course, but these are like a couple of approaches I think that have been used in the past.
Sure, thanks. On a related topic, before you ask me the question, Richard, I just saw a news article about one of the countries releasing a space junk capturing device. They have launched it, and the country being China. So they've launched it. It has actually gone up in space, and it is capturing the bad satellites.
What, the US ones?
That's what exactly. So
sorry, I'm spinning a punchline.
The way it is apparently doing that is by looking at the satellite. So it's doing image processing, identifying whether it's one of your bad satellites, and then destroying it. So US has of course raised alarms that, oh, it could actually go after our satellite. So I'm just trying to think of it from that angle, that somebody has launched a device which is going to actually do some great work of cleaning up space junk when you look at the news, and then other countries are objecting, so you could actually target the wrong thing because of your image algorithm being wrong, right? It could actually capture a working satellite and just hurl it away, or I don't know what it does with it, but it does destroy that. So it's very important that the algorithm is actually, that again, back to the same question, how do you train it to make sure it doesn't do something that it is not supposed to do?
And didn't Elon Musk, he lost 40, didn't he, the other day?
Yeah, but that was because of the sun, so we can't blame the algorithm there.
No scandal. Shailesh, we'll come back to you in just a moment, because I'm interested on kind of what kind of canvas you're using, and whether you have these kind of things that you're building up. But I see a couple of hands up, if that's okay in the meantime.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so Renato, I'm not sure if your hand is still up from before, or if you've got something you want to put it. Okay.
I lowered my hand, sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. But Shivbank, I think your hand just went up, didn't it? Shiva, are you there? Do you want to speak?
I think I
I think
can
it was
add.
Sivakant.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, hi. So, Ali, I have a small question. I have some data, suppose 100 records are there and it's a highly imbalanced. I can say 90%, 93% records are there which are non-diabetic patients. It's healthcare data, and 6% are diabetic. So I did train my data now. So should I balance the data? Or should I leave it as it is, because that is a true data. If I do some artificial data generation, so is it fine to do that, or should I leave it plain like this?
I think you should definitely balance the data. It's a very common problem, but you should definitely balance the data.
I did discuss with my business colleagues, but they told it's fine. Means if your data is like imbalance, why should you balance it if it's true data? It's not junk data. So that came to my mind. Yeah, he is telling right. Why should I balance? So yeah, people generally tell balance your data, but is it a hard rule like we should always balance, or sometimes we can leave it?
So I think that's a very interesting question, and it is quite common to kind of think of it like in that way. Like if the real world data is presented in a certain way, like why don't we just use it in the way it is, the way it is, because we are representing the real world. But this is exactly what we call the historical bias, where like there is bias like in the real world data that we collect. Now the problem with that would be, for example, you have like 96% data of diabetic patients and only 4%, for example, of like non-diabetic patients. So when you kind of apply, if you train the model on this and you kind of take it to real world, its accuracy on the diabetic patients would be really, really high, because 96% of them are kind of presented over there. But on non-diabetic patients, it would be really, really low, because they have hardly been represented in the data set. So the problem would be like, for non-diabetic patients, the model might kind of, most of the time would kind of mark them as diabetic.
No, the data 96% are non-diabetic, 4% are diabetic. That is data is true data.
Yeah. So you can kind of you can take the inverse of that. So if 96% is non-diabetic and only 4% are diabetic, then the chances of the algorithm of identifying diabetic patients based on this kind of data set are much, much lower. Why? Because the diabetic patients are like very much underrepresented in the data set.
Correct. So I should balance it actually.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Sorry, Ali, if I can add to that, the example which came to mind was the A-level results which happened last year, where the algorithm actually tried to score based on the data provided to it, and the data provided had a lot of attributes which actually contributed to bad research. So like postcode, yesterday we discussed that example, that the postcode was used and it was actually then trying to build a bias that people living in certain areas, they scored badly because of the data. So even though you may want to balance the data, I think imbalanced data can actually result in the algorithm learning something which it should not.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Shailesh. Mohammed, you have your hand up?
Yes, Ali, thank you very much. And I'm really sorry to interrupt here, because I've been waiting for a while, because my background is from healthcare, and I need your input. I would just give you a little statement and then I need your input there. In healthcare, typically I'm involved with the imaging, in the healthcare imaging, in radiology. I've been working as a radiologist, but then, lately for the last 5-10 years, I've been working with one of the bigger companies in the AI domain, but not as the data expert, as the clinical expert. My question to you, that, in clinical setup, Ali, we face, like, we call it 3 V's. Like, I'm talking about volume, velocity, and variety. Now, we have huge, volume, every day scanning patients. We have, like, different networkings and the velocity to transfer this data. But finally, we have a huge variety, which means unstructured data and then, structured data in forms of imaging and in terms of writing or numbers. So question to you, with all this background, question to you is that how can we treat this whole data as one single source? Number one. Number two, how do we agree upon a universal data vocabulary or dictionary? Number three, who is allowed? Now, that might be an ethical question, and my colleagues like Richard and those all, that who is allowed to access this data? I'm a radiologist. I'm working with a patient. Who else in my team, to share with me? Who else should be allowed? So to get this data, and lastly, that how to incorporate this data, which I'm getting, huge amounts into decision making. Because somebody was talking about AI. Now, in my understanding, AI, data is the fuel. Data is the fuel for this AI thing. AI is just a sort of engine. So I'm providing this fuel of data to this AI, and that's another story. But since we are focusing on data, I would really appreciate if I have asked you so many things, but my mind was blowing to ask you all this. Thank you.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you, for all the questions. I think these are all very pertinent questions, and they make kind of perfect sense. So firstly, I think if you have a lot of data and you have huge volumes of data, a huge velocity coming in every day, I don't know, I'm sure you already have systems in place for managing this data, probably some providers
we do.
AWS or Google Cloud or someone.
AWS and most of the healthcare setting.
Yeah. I think the crux of this would be whether the data that you have, all this huge amounts of data that you are you have coming in, it is unstructured. And now I think the most important question would be whether is this data labeled or not. So for example, if you're getting 100,000 images every day of scans, do they identify, okay, this scan has a tumor and this does not? This labeling is actually very important. And it might be,
sorry to interrupt. Do you mean by DICOM tagging in all that stuff?
So if you have any kind of images, what does that image represent? What are the features of that?
We do have raw data, or like unprocessed images, and then we do have processed images as well. So
you want to kind of if it is unstructured, if it does not have kind of any label what the image represents, I think the first step would still be you want to probably label them and see when you say you have processed data, what does that mean?
Processed data means we mostly get the images, and then these images, they are in a form of raw data, and then we can process it, or the clinicians, they can process it in a 3D or with different effects, different filters, and then we get the final images. So that's all okay. It's a form of compressed data. It's all okay. My only question was, forget about these images. My question was that, speaking about the data, how to build this unbiased and filtered data. What should be the single source of data after going through all these, let's say, filters and tunnels and everything? What should be the final source of data? That's, let's say, my one-liner question.
So because I don't really understand the exact context, I think now my guess is that, so if you have data coming in, huge volumes of data coming in, the first step for you, the first, again, the same thing, the first thing for you would be you have all this data being stored somewhere, in the database somewhere in the cloud, right? Probably write a couple of, so based on, you are a domain expert, based on your feedback, what do you expect from these images? What is it that you're analyzing? What are these images for? As a radiologist, when you analyze these images, when they go through certain filters, what is it that those filters are doing? What are they identifying from?
Normal images, unspecified, and then images with a disease.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the crux of it. So you have kind of a script there in the cloud, ideally wherever you're storing the images go through that script, and it kind of categorizes those images. So for example, these are unspecified, these are the ones which have a disease, and these are like these are normal, these are the normal ones. I think this can be a pretty good way to kind of like start structuring your data. And in terms of, you want like one particular data source that wherever in the cloud, like wherever you kind of saving that, like this can be that one particular source that you can build for your data set. It can be, I would say, like partially structured, because you've already identified, you've already kind of like marked them as normal, unspecified, or
Agree.
with disease. Yeah. I hope like it offers like yeah, this is helpful.
Yeah, please continue. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. So in the interest of time, like I want to kind of go ahead and cover the last column before we kind of dive deeper into filling in this canvas for the recruitment sector.
There's a question from Alejandro, but do you want to move on in the interest of time, Ali?
For now, I think yes, and hopefully like I can come back to it later.
Okay. All right. Yep. I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. So then, like, we discussed it briefly yesterday as well, like in terms of like the stakeholders, like who are the stakeholders, like who are building the system, who are kind of building the system, who are impacted by the system, who will be using the system. And many times, the bias can be ingrained in the people like who are building the system, people who decide to collect the data, people who are building the machine learning models. They can be, like bias in that. And you have to kind of, be very kind of cautious of it, and you have to identify it at all these, like different angles. It is very important to highlight and think openly about, what would be the far-reaching impact of the AI product that you are building. Who will be the people who will be affected by it directly, and who are the groups of people who might be impacted by it indirectly. Then we have the risks. I think we have discussed quite a few of them. Like one of the basic fundamental risks of building any AI product is the bias. It can be biased against a particular group. It can be biased in favor of a certain sector. It is very important, and this bias can be at any stage of the AI development pipeline. So like for an AI tool, when you are sitting in a room and you kind of start drawing sketches or start jotting down ideas of what the tool should do, then you think that, okay, this is what the tool should do. This is the kind of data that we need. Okay, so we have started collecting the data now. Once we have the data, we have started processing the data. We are engineering the data, like we are cleaning the data. So once we have a data in a certain format, we have analyzed it. We have done some exploratory analysis. We understand the data quite well. Now we have to put it in a machine learning model. Then machine learning model has given us some outputs. So we have these outputs. We have validated the model. We have seen it is performing quite well. Okay, now we want to deploy it. All these different steps that I've mentioned, there can be bias in any of these steps. This bias can occur at any stage. Even before you start building the tool, there might be bias in the way you have thought of collecting the data. Because many times we might be using proxies to collect the data. For example, if you are, for the recruitment tool we will discuss later on, if you are, if you want to kind of predict that, if you want to kind of predict that this particular candidate who has applied might perform really well as a financial trader, as a stockbroker, and you take insights from experts on what do they think like good stockbroker would look like, and all these experts, for example, are male for whatever reason, and you just spoke to them and you haven't kind of taken account of diversity in there. There is this one bias that you've taken that has kind of become a part of your AI development process, because there is no diversity involved. There is no diversity of opinion involved when it comes to the metrics that you want to use to measure whatever you want to build the AI tool for. So it is very important to kind of always be, I would say, like skeptical of the decisions that are being taken and the assumptions that are being made. And I think I do want to iterate over here, like no matter which AI tool you're building for which sector, for whichever sector, there will always be assumptions made in the process. Now, it depends on your resources, the resources that you have on board, the time that you have, like how many of those assumptions can be tested. And how many of these assumptions you want to verify, like, okay, we have tested this assumption, it kind of makes sense. It is entirely possible that you make a wrong assumption and the tool does not perform as expectedly on the ground. And we will again like discuss this in a bit when we discuss the recruitment tool. And like last but not the least, the benefits. Like once you think of kind of building an AI product, like what do you think would be the benefits for it, like for your organization? What do you think like would be the kind of impact that it would have? One of the points that was raised yesterday was like building AI products or building AI tools. Many people think that building systems like this can lead to unemployment and like AI just taking over the world. How do you what is your tool doing? Is it kind of replacing humans? Is it empowering humans to take more informed decisions? Is it taking decisions completely autonomously? But in that autonomy, there is a lot more efficiency involved, and there is no like bias as such against any group. So what is the value that the AI product that you're planning on building? What is the value that that particular tool is bringing to the table? So yeah, so now we want to kind of move on to the recruitment tool. Like we will fill in the canvas for the recruitment tool, and then we will move on to the you people filling in the canvases for your own products. Richard, in the interest of time, do you think we should continue with the recruitment tool and then go into the breakout rooms, or should we just first go into the breakout rooms and people can start? I've seen like a lot of people have very interesting ideas of the AI products that they want to build. I think it might be like more useful if we can spend some more time on their ideas, and they can start filling in this canvas for their own particular contexts.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think this airtime for people who have specific questions is clearly a great use of this, of your resource and this time we have together. How long would it take us to get a feel of putting through this canvas, the recruitment use case? Because we are tight on time, and that's my fault. I apologize.
No problem at all. I think this has been a very useful discussion, and it's good that people have kind of brought in their questions. I think it has been a useful discussion for everyone. It would take I would say around 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, I'm happy to make a decision, but also in the interest of democracy, we just get some in the chat, some feedback. What's the view? We've got a pretty engaged group here. Really. Do you want to spend 15, 20 minutes doing an example of this around recruitment? Would that be helpful? Do you want, so that's option one. We can go through that. Option two as we jump into some breakout rooms and we start doing this for real now to make use of that time. And obviously I'll lead, Ali can lead, and so on too. You're looking for everybody to do it, or we're going to work on somebody's problem together in the breakout room, Ali?
When we go into the breakout rooms, that particular group can choose one particular problem that they want to kind of focus on, and they can start filling in the canvas for that particular problem.
Okay, well that to me sounds fun. What have Andrew's responded so far? Breakout rooms. Yeah, should we make an executive decision? We'll jump in some rooms, pick somebody in the room, and we'll work through this together. Okay. Do you want me to do that room-wise?
Did I just win by being the only person that voted?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's applications are different, Henry. You're right. I mean, we're partly solving problems here and partly learning from each other. So it's, if a little like Andrew, really, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So if you're the one saying, I want to do this canvas loudly, then, that's a good way to get in the spotlight. Do we have, I don't think, this is a bit of a challenge now. I don't think we've got the rooms on here because this is a new account and it hasn't been set up. So that's a little bit of a faux pas on this side. So,
well, let's run through the example quickly and then open it up for lots of questions, and maybe that's Maybe that's the happy medium. Yeah. Just throwing that out there, Richard.
All right,
Ali.
we're going to fill this in together anyway, aren't we, Ali? This
Yeah.
recruitment.
That
All
sounds
right,
good. Yeah.
let's jump in.
Yeah.
Let's just get moving on this. Then that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just start, like filling this in, and like I want this to be like very interactive. So I want like your opinions on so if we are building, for example, I'll just lay down the groundwork. So the context is that we want a particular recruitment tool, and we want to kind of, for example, recruit, you can say like for financial services, and we want to recruit traders. What do you think firstly would be the use case? What is the problem that we are solving in this context?
So you're talking about screening a large number of applicants?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, filtering. I mean, you want to make sure they've got a valid visa. I think Hayes say 50% of every CV they receive each day isn't actually valid for the work that it's intended to do.
Yep.
So screening, filtering. I mean, ultimately, you're looking to shortlist here, aren't you? You're looking to reduce a long list to a shorter list.
Yeah.
With fairness.
Yeah.
You're looking for inclusivity and diversity in the long list, of course. You maybe want to check on that and check, what kind of diversity you have in the application to start with. You might want to go back out to market if it doesn't look like it's a wide enough group. Could be that your advert has some biases in it, the way it's written, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Jump in, guys. Jump in.
Yes, detect the fraud, maybe detect the fraud or the false information, maybe.
Yep.
From the.
And I presume the business problem is that they're currently doing all of this stuff, but it's costing too much in terms of people's time, and they're possibly doing it with biases at the moment.
Yeah. And they want to kind of increase efficiency in the recruitment process, or possibly like they are recruiting traders, but these traders are not performing very well, and they think they have a good amount of data for which for example, they have a good amount of data, and they think they can leverage AI to kind of assist the recruitment managers or office managers to recruit like more capable traders or candidates who AI thinks like might perform well in the future. So, and what do you people think would be the challenges? Any potential challenge for this?
I think the one we talked about in terms of the biases in the data and so on, I think on one hand, you want to only collect data that you need, but you need enough data to understand what gaps you might have in your candidate list.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't want to be asking age and you don't want to be asking gender, but you want to know those things to be able to show that you've got some fairness in your internal workings. So I think that's one. Big data, always a challenge.
Yeah.
You've got.
Well,
it depends how they've sent the information in. If you're trying to review CVs using NLP, or whether they filmed in a form.
Yeah.
What else, guys?
Or it might.
Go on, Ali.
Or it can be the opposite as well. Like they don't have enough data. Like they think they have a lot of data. Like they bring in an AI researcher, they analyze it, and they say, okay, so you do have a good amount of data, but it is not very relevant for what you want to do. So it can be like the other way around as well. Either it's too much data, too much unstructured data, or it is like they don't have enough data. Like bias, in recruitment, like biases. One of the earliest like controversies in AI was a bias. A bias in the recruitment tool that against a particular gender. that was like built by, I think, one of the big 5 tech companies today, and they didn't realize like there was this bias, but it was just naturally ingrained in the system. So like bias is a very big problem in recruitment.
Yeah. Yeah, so Hessam, you see that customer segmentation, hardware limitations. Not sure if you're seeing these, Ali, on the chat.
Yeah, hardware limitations. Yeah.
The time to solve the necessity, the time that is too short.
Time constraints. Yeah.
I would imagine some effort would need to be deployed to labeling the available data, and typically that can be very troublesome, especially with something like a mass of CVs. It might be troublesome to label them correctly for the machine to learn features.
Exactly. So basically, managing the big data, especially when there are CVs, like it's documents. They are like there's a good size of each document. They're PDFs, and storing them, processing them, analyzing them. That can be time consuming. That can require a good amount of resources. So that's a challenge as well. And just to kind of dive a bit deeper into this, and this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of bring to everyone's attention over here through this case study. So when we say like about the AS solution, what do we want the tool to do? Like, do we want the tool to be autonomous, and do we want the tool to kind of accept or reject candidates? So for example, if I apply for a particular job or for a particular role, the tool would just kind of it would analyze my CV, for example. It would see some of the filters. It would analyze my CV and would say, okay, the tool thinks that I'm not a very good candidate for this, and it just sends me a rejection email, which is like completely autonomous, no human involvement. Or do we want the tool to provide some insights to the recruitment manager to take the final decision? Like, how do you think? What do you people think? And there are pros and cons of both strategies, and there is no right answer. Like, what do you people think? Like, what should be the right strategy, or what do you think is more appropriate?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on that, but obviously really keen to hear from everybody on the call. I certainly you don't need to hear my voice that much for sure.
I think it'll depend on the type of role.
Yeah.
And it could be that a company thinks they want a particular type of candidate, and when they get applications coming in, they realise that they actually need something a bit different, or that the people they think they want aren't available in the marketplace.
Yeah. Robert, what do you think?
I'm just showing some of my traditional bias here. People are the most important resource to an organization, and I just feel very, very skeptical about making automated decisions on hiring. We're talking about financial services here and trading. Those guys are dealing with millions, billions of dollars, and so this. I know this is an exercise, but we have to treat it with extreme care on this particular type of subject.
No, you're right. I mean, yeah, as real on this, I think that there is clearly a process here for those CVs that are not valid for work, and so you clearly don't want to be putting CVs in front of a hiring manager that needs to just be discarded. So I think, but the respectful, appropriate way of doing that. I mean, it's not been the recruitment industry's forte, has it, to actually respond and respectfully respond. And well, Robert, is there a place for AI to cover some of those gaps up, do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. It was just I just felt that you guys are a very, very tech crowd, and I just wanted to bring a more sort of business view to the importance of hiring and the difficulties of hiring.
Yeah, it's really, really good to hear that.
Again, I guess
I
guess the flip side to that, though, is that my wife works as a HR consultant, and she says that the bias in hiring managers is probably just as bad, if not worse, than the bias that we would introduce in any algorithmic solution. So, yeah, completely accept that. But I think the the different hiring decisions that one manager will make from another, it may be just as bad. So I don't know. Yeah.
Let me ask a question, Richard. The canvas is not fixed. The canvas, the proposal is to be customized. Is correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's here to raise debate, isn't it, and to put things down and spot these kind of challenges, and then have a working plan to be going to. I mean, this is obviously you'd go deeper and deeper into this stuff, wouldn't you, as the project progresses? So what else do we need in that third box then, Ali?
Yeah.
Is that enough? Or
I think Tim has enough.
Oh yes. Can't hear you, Tim. Are you talking? Yeah, you're unmuted, but the mic's off or something.
Is that any better?
Yep, loud and clear.
Is that any better?
Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, I did have a point, but I think it was it's gone because of the last conversation. But I think I was focused on are we actually focusing on this being a one-off type experiment where you've got some data, you've been asked to do some analysis, and that's the end point, or is this actually part of an integrated business process that you say, we have something like a Pega automated environment that we need to put this into and manage. So I suppose in terms of how the IT or how the AI solution, if it needs to fit in the existing process, how it's going to do that and how you're going to manage it, all that sort of stuff as well, would be sort of something else I'd raise as an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I think
Ali, what would you say to that?
Yeah, so this actually brings me to my to the point which I wanted to make. So let's say that let's take like Robert's viewpoint, and we will make it a bit practical, and we will say like so it is too risky to kind of take autonomous decisions at this point for recruitment, and we want our tool. We have taken this decision that we want our tool to provide some insights and provide some predictions to recruitment managers as an extra source of information when they are taking decisions about particular candidates. Right. So, for example, and this is like, one of the approaches we discussed yesterday was a human in the loop approach. We have a recruitment manager who's a human in the loop. And what this AI tool is, for example, is doing, and I'm just like taking this decision that we want our tool to kind of, enable more informed decision making by the recruitment managers by providing them some extra insights. For example, so we are recruiting traders, and we have like already, you can say like 1,000 traders in our company, and we have the data of those 1,000 traders. Now, my question to you would be like, we have data for those 1,000 traders, and we want to recruit the next batch of 100 traders. Now, how do you think that we would be able to utilize the data of those 1,000 traders in kind of evaluating and analyzing how we should recruit the next 100 traders?
Ooh, great question.
There are many ways of going about it. And this was one of the points which was made earlier. There are many ways to go about it, and there is no right or wrong answer. And this is where the strategy comes in. Like, how do you utilize the data that you currently have?
Tim, do you want to say something on that first, just because you're at the top of my screen? You must have thought about that in the past, I imagine.
Well, how to use the data to?
Well, so you don't want to repeat the past. You don't want to just hire for what's worked in the past, but you want to learn from what your top performers do. So always an interesting challenge, isn't it, for AI?
Yeah, so that's the sort of more of a, yeah, it's an interesting question. You can take the view that, we can model based on the past, and we continue to improve our models to reflect the current state of the business. But then you've got a whole different ball game when you've got, okay, so we want to change the business and we want to do something else. We want to become more ethical. We want to, change the organization structure in some way. So your models won't necessarily work. You have to then start looking at the data to find the. This is one of the things that I've also thought about a lot as well, is you then have to start introducing bias into the models. So instead of sort of avoiding bias, you might say, actually, I want to put bias, the data and selection towards people who are acting more ethically. Can't even get my words out today. You want to actually start introducing biases to make the models predict what you need for the future as opposed to what you've done in the past. So that's one approach you could approach.
Yeah, nicely put, Tim. Anybody else want to add some context to that? Any experiences on the call, perhaps? Anybody had to deal with something like that?
So this is Paul here. I don't know if my connection's great, but I just wanted to point out, I'm not sure that is introducing bias into the model, although I can see the similarity. What we do is by having all that historical data, but with a new value set, you can weight models differently. So you can choose to add weighting, you can put value on certain variables, but you do that consciously. Whereas the notion of bias, of being unconscious, is that's the problem. So it's not so much about eliminating bias and putting bias in, it's simply about noticing bias and then making conscious decisions about what you choose to weight differently under different circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase bias there is one of the ones we could probably discuss about a little bit, but the approach is the same. You know, you're actually changing the model to try and, as you say, weight it or bias it, or introducing a bias, whatever you want, a conscious bias, whatever you want to do, into the data set, so that it gives you a more appropriate answer for what you need. And there's a whole raft of discussion around that. Just generally speaking, you know, everyone says, yeah, unconscious bias is generally bad, but this conscious bias or this conscious weighting of models is actually one of the things that gives people advantage as well. So, you know, in a wider context, if we're all, you know, talking about how we can, you know, employ various people, if everyone's using the same model across the whole world, then no one is gaining any advantage. So, you know, you do have to introduce these weights, let's say, in order to get, you know, your competitive advantage out of these models, would be my view.
Nice, there's great answers on this call. Anybody else want to say anything on that? That's a really interesting point before we move on. Anybody want to add to that? No, okay. Great, let's move on.
Okay. So I think there are, so I'll provide my insights as well. So I think there are like two ways in which probably like, simply there are, I think, two ways in which this can be probably addressed. So for example, we have the data of 1,000 traders, and we say like we have their trading data for the past 2 years. So firstly, you know, like we try to do some, we do some exploratory analysis. We try to kind of analyze the data, and we see like which of those traders have been performing really well and which have not been performing very well, right? And so, and then based on that, you know, one thing that we can see, we can, you know, take advice from domain experts on is that from the office managers who manage these traders, is that do they think that the traders who perform well compared to the traders who do not perform very well, like, you know, they show certain behavioral traits, certain behavioral characteristics. They behave like they have certain characteristics which other traders who do not perform very well don't have. And based on their feedback, if they say like, yes, we see certain behavioral traits, then we can, you know, like look into some literature in financial trading and kind of explore what kind of behavioral traits do good traders represent. Now, based on that, based on those behavioral traits, we can kind of make a questionnaire, which kind of a questionnaire which can be filled by these traders. And in that questionnaire, they would answer certain questions. Like, for example, they are very energetic. They play like a lot of different sports, you know, and they get like when they're under pressure, they, for example, perform really well when they're under pressure. These kind of, you know, characteristics. They fill in the questionnaire based on which you know, acts as the metrics that we get, and the performance of those traders are basically how they perform, like how much profit do they generate for the company. That can act as the label, which is like, you know, what we are measuring, like how do these traders perform. And one thing that we can do, like one of the ways to go about it, is that this questionnaire that has been filled by these traders, we give in when new candidates apply, after filtering them, like if they fulfill like the basic requirements, like they have the right to work in the country that they are applying, etc., etc. We can ask these traders to kind of, you know, fill in this questionnaire as well. And based on that, we can make a prediction, like how these new candidates would perform in real world when they are kind of deployed, when they are kind of, you know, trading live on the trading floor. Does that this is like one way in which we can do this. Does that kind of make sense? I think I do want to kind of mention here that this is actually a very, a similar kind of thing, which was brought forward by Andrew earlier, and I think another person as well, regarding they have a lot of data. I think it was Henry. They have a lot of data, but they don't know what to do with it. And over here also you have a data of 1,000 traders, but you don't really know, what to do. What problem do you want to kind of solve with this? Or like, what can you do? You can make predictions about those traders, but if you want to apply it in a bit different context, and you want to utilize the data of these traders to hire good candidates, there is a certain way that you have to kind of go about it. And that is where, the interviews, domain expertise come in. The interviews with the domain experts come in. We ask them questions. We try to understand what are the behavior, if there is a significant difference on the behavioral traits or on the personality traits of traders who perform really well compared to traders who do not perform very well. And then we take it forward from there. We try to kind of validate this through research. Have a look at some literature, and we see what the literature says about this. And from there, then we extract a questionnaire which kind of measures the behaviors or marks the behaviors of these traders, where the data of this questionnaire is basically the data, you can say like the features that we have for our machine learning model, for our AI product, and the performance of those traders, like how much profit are they generating, that basically acts as the labels. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I get it. I think so. Everybody else?
Yeah.
Everybody nodding?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. And there is also like another way of going about it. Another way is like, once we have the new candidates coming in, so we kind of, analyze the data or the trading behavior, like how are these, how are these traders who perform really well, how do they use the trading platform? And, like what kind of clicks they make, how often do they use their mouse, etc., etc. We can kind of, use this as an interesting data on how they perform on the screen, like how often do they use the mouse, which buttons do they click. And then we can, once we have new candidates applying for this position, we can, give them a simulator for example, 2 hours in the assessment center, and we can ask them to kind of, trade in that simulation, and we can see like how do they use that simulator. Again, there are a lot of assumptions involved in this, and this can, like go terribly wrong. But there is this is another way in which, we can kind of try to utilize the data of these traders whom we already have, this rich data that we already have, and try to utilize this data to kind of recruit better traders for future. And the good thing is, yeah, like, does this make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the other thing you can do is train your current traders with the same data as well. So it has sort of other side effects you can put into.
Yeah. Of traders we currently have on the screen or based on research. So we can, like start gathering the data. And also and over here, then, there was one thing that was mentioned yesterday about sensitive variables. We have been talking a lot today about bias as well, like, AI going wrong, risks involved. We will discuss that in the risks as well. But, like if those 1,000 traders, out of those 1,000 traders, 950 are males, and we have only like 50 females over there, our model is, bound to be biased. If out of those 1,000 traders, all of them are based in, for example, UK, our model is supposed to be kind of, limited to that particular geographic location. Our AI tool, I mean, is limited to that to perform better than that geographic location. If for those 1,000 traders, all those traders are between the age group of 35 and 40 or 35 and 45, our model, our AI product is kind of, limited to that particular age group. And all these, sensitive variables data, we need to do some exploratory analysis on that, like what are the strengths and weaknesses of our particular AI product. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I think over here, then it is also like, as you mentioned, like as I've mentioned earlier, it's always like worth to look into, like, are there any other like financial services companies who are using recruitment, AI-powered recruitment tools? If yes, what kind of tools are they using? And it is worth exploring. I know like many times companies would not share a lot of information and it is confidential, but many times companies do publish their research, like the work they do in this domain. They try to publish it because it gives them a lot of credibility. It might be worth looking into kind of, the papers that they have published and see how they have applied AI in that particular context, and what kind of data have they used in that context, and how has that worked out for them. And another thing that you have to do, like once you have this like behavioral features, once you have collected the data, another thing that you have to do over there is you have to kind of analyze if there are any correlations in the data set. If, for example, you have like 40 behavioral traits that you are mining, and out of those 40, like 20 behavioral traits are very much highly correlated, like, and like a data scientist would use like a particular like Python library to analyze that, and they would tell you like these particular features are very much highly correlated. You would kind of remove half of those features. Why? Because this would kind of improve the accuracy of the results. So the features that are highly correlated, they tend to reinforce each other in the AI development process. So over there, then you tend to kind of, the whoever is the AI expert or the data scientist that you have on board, you kind of tend to remove them from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ali.
Yeah.
And along with that, we can normalize the data also. So different attributes are having different scales.
Normalize, clean. Yeah. Normalize and clean the data. Exactly. And you also remove highly correlated features. Is there anything else you people think like that should be added over here?
Yeah. Feature engineering.
Feature engineering, exactly. Yeah. Actually, we can add that over here. Yep.
So a lot more may be there. So it depends upon the data where what is getting fit.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like, okay, so you have like feature engineering, you have removed like highly correlated features, and now you think your data set is, ready, and it can go into a particular machine learning model, and we can start making predictions.
Yeah, dimensionality reduction is
exactly. Highly correlated. Yeah, exactly. So this is basically what it is. I was actually thinking of this term, it was just missing my mind. Thank you. Dimensionality reduction. This is what it is. Yeah. So you basically reduce the dimensions of the data. Sorry, Henry, you have your hand up.
Sorry, one quick question. When you say you remove the highly correlated features, you mean ones that are correlated with each other, or ones which are correlated with the end result you're trying to achieve?
The ones which correlate with each other.
Okay.
Yeah, because once they correlate with each other, they're in a way like reinforcing, the same attribute in the data set. The ones which are highly correlated with the labels, like with the performance, they are very useful. They're very important because this means these features would have an impact on how the traders would perform.
Okay. The only thing I'd say is that the sort of data I'm looking at, the features that are highly correlated with the end result vary across data sets. So if you got rid of the ones that were highly correlated with each other for a different data set, you might get rid of too many, depending on how you
different data sets might have different features.
Yeah.
You mean, yeah. Okay, I think in your sense, it might be like worth looking into kind of merging all the data sets that you have, like different data sets, and seeing like how do they perform, what kind of results do you kind of, like get out of that, like getting all the data together and putting it in, after cleaning it, putting it into a machine learning model and seeing like the results that you get in that way. Yeah. So like moving on, so like, and then you basically make a choice of the machine learning model, like which machine learning model do you want to choose. So like one of the like decisions that one of the decisions that we made was that we want our tool to have a human in the loop. right? Now, when we want a human in the loop, we want a recruitment manager who's using the tool, and this AI tool is providing them an extra insight that this particular candidate might perform really well in the future. This candidate might not perform very well. In that context, do you think it is worth it? Like, we want, what are the considerations do you think we should take into account when we are trying to choose a particular machine learning model? We discussed some of the considerations like yesterday, for example, whether we want our tool to be explainable or not, or whether what kind of data we have, that also kind of determines what kind of machine learning model should we use. So in this context, as we have a human in the loop, do you think we want the tool to be explainable?
Yes, it should be explainable.
Yeah. And yeah.
Only before models, we can do a hypothesis testing also.
Yeah. Yeah, hypothesis testing. Yeah, that's a good idea. Testing over here as well. You want the tool to be explainable. And why do you think the explainability might help in this context? Does anyone have like any insights in this?
Yeah, we can explain the results to others. So if we use logistic regression or some lightweight model, easily we can tell what's the output. But if we use some complex, maybe deep learning or XGBoost or random forest, so it might be difficult to explain the results. So that is one aspect of using lightweight model.
Yeah. Might cause problems in this context. So, like, for example, you can't use deep learning in this. I mean, it's not that you can't, it's like, it is advisable not to use deep learning. Why? Because deep learning models or neural networks are normally considered black box models. It is difficult to make them explainable. And the reason why we want the tool to be explainable is because we have a recruitment manager, the person who is sitting, they are not very tech savvy, and they see these, and they are evaluating a particular candidate's application, and they see this insight or a prediction from an AI tool. It is important for them to, understand how the tool is making a particular prediction. So for example, if the tool is making a prediction which completely contradicts that particular recruitment manager's own views, this means they want that particular, this means that they can look into the tool and see like why the tool is making that prediction. And if there is a contradiction onto the reasoning as well, like if the tool thinks that this particular candidate has, it can be very aggressive at times based on the behavioral traits that we are using. If the tool thinks that this candidate can be, for example, very aggressive at times, but the recruitment manager thinks that that is not the case. So, they can basically decide based on that, like whether they should go with their own insights or whether they should kind of, accept what the AI product is saying. So that is why like explainability with the human in the loop approach is kind of, like very important in this context. And then also the kind of data that you have. One of the, another factor that impacts the ML models you use is if you have a very small amount of data, there are certain models that might perform better compared to others. If you have data of 1,000 traders only, that is not like as such, like a lot of data. So there are some algorithms like random forest or like, support vector machines that might perform better because considering the kind of data or the amount of data that you have. Or the amount of data you have, right? Now, moving on, who do you people think would be the stakeholders in this context? Who are the people who would be impacted by this recruitment tool?
I suppose you want the HR director or people director involved.
Yeah. So we want like the, it would be basically the HR managers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The people to try to find a job.
Yeah, candidates, exactly. They would be directly impacted by this. With applications, yeah. And can we say like indirectly their families might be impacted by this as well? For example, if they get a job, if they don't get a job, Do you think like, what do people think about that? Like, is it worth considering that? So because like, like if you're building a recruitment tool, if a candidate gets a particular job, it can be considered a high impact domain, like an AI tool playing a role in giving someone a job, or playing a role in making sure that or playing a role in kind of rejecting a candidate, that's kind of a high impact domain where it has a huge impact on the candidate. And there are like regulations now coming in place where, the companies have to kind of, reveal how they are taking decisions about candidates' applications. So like, the candidates' families might be another like stakeholder that can be actually impacted by this because if they get a job, they might get good future prospects. If they don't get a job, they might stay jobless for the next, I don't know, like few weeks or few months. So we should always be on the safe side when we are analyzing, these kind of factors. So I think like it is good to kind of put in the candidates like families as well.
Okay.
And then the risks, something that we have been discussing quite often. What do you think are the risks involved? So one is that it can be biased.
Yeah, inclusion, lack of inclusion.
Yeah.
Lack of diversity we talked about in those biases. There's a risk to the brand, if you just auto reject people and it's efficient for you, great, but it's a bad user experience for them, and
yeah, they
obviously might tweet about it or whatever, or not,
exactly.
Not shop at your shop anymore if that's,
exactly.
They're every candidate is potentially a customer, aren't they?
Exactly.
There's also a risk. There's also a risk that some of the best potential people actually reject it at the start because it's AI, and they have an expectation they are worth at least a person. So you might lose some of your most talented people.
I think the risk is that you don't get access to very talented people because they don't fit the mold of what you've done
exactly.
before.
Yeah.
We touched on earlier, didn't we?
Yeah. Traders, you don't have like new insights on like new thinking coming in, because the data that you have trained your AI product on is based on the traders that you already have on board.
Yes.
Okay. And last but not the least, what do you think would be the benefits? Some of them we have already discussed in the use cases.
Yeah, I mean, you've got efficiency and productivity here in theory.
Yeah.
Potentially cost savings. This could be efficiency, of course, but in theory, you are able to review a larger pool of people, so quality. The AI,
and
well, the AI could reduce bias, of course. We naturally biased. We all want to hire somebody who looks and sounds like us, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. AI could like reduce bias. It can also improve the quality of candidates that are recruited.
Yep. Just anything else on the chat? Other stakeholder could be the
competitors. Yeah, that's a very good point. Indirectly, yeah.
Yeah. Challenges and the risk, yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, and we have to retrain the model on continuous intervals, like maybe 3 months, 2 months. So that's also a challenge, I can say.
Keep a check on the model. Yeah,
yes.
Keep a check on the model. So in terms of risks, keep a close eye on the model's performance.
Yeah, data might change and we might be unaware of that. So
yeah, concept drift. Yeah.
So that is drift, correct?
Yeah, concept drift. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Ali,
yep.
Ali, that's quite a good point. On the readiness canvas, that there isn't something about timelines and you know the timescale for actually delivering stuff, testing stuff. You know that I think that could be something which could be included on it.
Yeah. So by that you mean, Robert, like what is the timeline in which you want to develop the tool or something like that, like taking account of the steps?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I mean, you've got all your sort of key ingredients on here, but we haven't got. So right, how quickly? How is it? So what time frame do we have to deliver it? Because some of this just might not be possible without actually with talking about the stakeholders.
Yeah.
So setting out realistic time frames.
That's a very good point. I think so. We mentioned one of the things over here in the challenges. That can be one of the challenges, especially when you have your competitors who are kind of who are working on an AI product or are have already launched an AI powered product. Then time constraints become like a big challenge. That's a very valid point here. I think that comes under the umbrella of like challenges. Like time is a challenge. When you have a lot of structured data, like how much time do you spend on exploring it, understanding it? How much time do you spend on mitigating biases? How much time do you spend on, usability tests before putting it in real world scenarios? All these things kind of matter in that way. Sorry, I think we are already 2 minutes over time. So does anyone have like any other like last comments on this?
I think it's been a really positive session, Ali. I was just wondering when do you think the slides or the recordings will be published?
Okay, I'll share them with MKAI. I think if Paul is here, I think he might be able to update on that.
So certainly I've got the recording this side.
Okay, yeah, Richard, sorry, yeah.
Let me help you, right? So the easiest way to doing this is that we've got this LinkedIn group where we can keep the conversations going. I suspect a few of you are in it, but before you hop off today, go ahead, click this link. It'll pop your request over, and I'll drop all the stuff in there probably tonight. To be honest, I mean it takes an hour or so for the recording to come through from Zoom, but other than that, yeah, I'll put them in, and we can. Ali, are you in that group?
Let me just check. I think I'm not, but I'll join it now.
Yeah, if you go ahead and join that, I'm in there.
Yeah.
Can invite Paul as well, and then let's keep the debate going, and then we're going to pop the completion certificate and so on in there for those who've done both sessions or completed this canvas with us, and then we can catch up in there.
I need something for these white walls in this office. Absolutely, sounds good.
Yeah, it'll be just the usual thing, sort of 6 foot by 6 foot banner, the usual.
Fantastic, thank you, Richard.
Yeah,
But we may well ask you for some reflections on the sessions just to earn that certificate.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always happy to give feedback.
Just 5,000 words, Andrew.
Okay, maybe not 5,000, but I'll certainly give you a few. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, most people are getting that done in under 3 hours, to be honest. So it's pretty quick. Obviously, everybody knows we're joking here. This is a short exercise just for us to kind of collect a little bit of learnings from this. But I'll say some thanks. So, thanks, Paul, who has been organizing, coordinating from distance and also on yesterday's session. Thank Ali, of course, for spending this time with us. I've certainly really enjoyed hanging out with you all today and learning more from everybody on their ideas and challenges. And I found this to be quite, let's just say that the 2 hours has flown, hasn't it, really quickly, which is always a good sign. And to all of you, everybody that's been on the chat conversation or been around today, it's just been tremendous to learn with you and grow with you. So thank you for, opportunity to spend time with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, team.
Take care.
Hold on. Bye.